Paranormal Patio Podcast with Jason and John. Pull up a chair.
And welcome back to the Paranormal Patio. As always, I am Jason. Tonight I've got a sit-down interview with Lon Strickler of phantomsandmonsters.com. Lon is a longtime Fortean and paranormal researcher, currently investigating the sightings of the flying cryptids, or almost Mothman-like creatures in the greater Chicago area, and he has sat down with us to talk about that and lots more. So without further ado, we'll get you right into the interview. All right, Lon, welcome to the Paranormal Patio.
Thanks for having me.
Man, thanks for coming on. This is a pleasure for me. I have viewed your website daily for I don't know how many years. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are also in the same boat. But I guess my first question to you, and I don't want it to oversimplify it, but how long have you been investigating the paranormal and cryptids?
Oh, I've been involved with paranormal for a long time. Let's put it that way. It's been over 40 years.
Wow.
I actually knew I had some type of intuitive ability when I was around 8 years old. As I got older, I started, around the time I was in high school, I started doing my own paranormal investigations. That was back in the mid-'70s. At a time when people just didn't do that back then. So,
sure.
I had done that for a while, doing hauntings and such, and other cases people get me involved in. Then I had an encounter in 1981 with a Bigfoot, and after that occurred, I became more interested in the cryptid side of the paranormal, and that kind of led me to where I am today.
Do you feel that the cryptids that are so often reported are actual flesh and blood creatures? Are they some sort of manifestation of people's subconscious, or where's your stance on that?
Well, it's kind of twofold. In the case of Bigfoot in particular, I do believe that there are some areas where these are indigenous beings. Okay. The Pacific Northwest, Florida, around the Gulf states, and those areas. But overall, I do believe that in other areas, and including other cryptids, I believe these are most likely some type of interdimensional or a being that has the ability to move in and out of different realities.
That's always been my stance as well. A lot of that, it comes from reading John Keel and that sort of window area type phenomena. Would you say that you kind of agree with the John Keel type situation where you have strange lights and Bigfoot and contact with ultra-terrestrial beings and all that kind of happening at the same time?
Well, yeah, I do believe that a lot of paranormal genre does kind of intertwine with itself. There are many instances where there is a phenomena occurring and other paranormal activity occurs as well. Specific hot spots where all kinds of things occur. Yeah, I do believe that. And is it associated with each other? Yeah, most likely. But, it may be something to where it just, the concentration of energy, or say a possibility of a portal or a tear in the veil. I mean, it just may be that, this type of activity is susceptible to areas like that.
That's a good point. You have, quartz deposits and geomagnetic fields that are shifting and strong in certain parts of the country. I think it's a totally plausible theory. That's kind of what I prescribe to as well. We're on the same page with a lot of this stuff. It's fascinating. My next question for you, and I know that this is actually what led me to contact you for the show, was This whole Chicago area flying cryptid sighting flap that's been going on for, 9 years now or so?
Well, there were some sightings in 2011, but most of the most of the sightings that have been going on with this most recent flap starting early 2017.
Can you give us a brief rundown? I don't want you to go too in depth. Obviously, I want to direct people back to your work that you've published on your site, but just a brief rundown of what you think is going on, some of the sightings, and where we're at right now.
Well, I wish I knew what was going on. I mean, this is a phenomena that's kind of, it's kind of come and gone, waned back and forth, but it's been fairly steady now for at least 4 years. These sightings have been within the Chicago city limits and areas outside of the city, as far north as southern Wisconsin into many parts of Illinois, into northern and central Indiana. What these things are, we really don't know. I believe there's some type of interdimensional being. We've had cases where people have seen these things flying and suddenly disappear, like it went through an invisible doorway of some type. The sightings themselves, the descriptions, I mean, these are fleeting sightings for the most part, very quick. Mm-hmm. There have been people that have attempted to take photographs, but by the time they get the shock of seeing this thing and realize they got a camera on them and try to get a shot, this thing's gone.
Right.
So, that's why we haven't had any real discernible photographs of it. The overall description is of a 5 to 6 foot tall, emaciated humanoid being that's dark in color, with legs and arms. Sometimes the arms are attached to wings. Sometimes they're separate from wings. The wings themselves are a bat-like, gargoyle-like membrane wing, anywhere from 10 to 15 foot in width, and has a small head. Sometimes it has red eyes. And people have seen these things standing, and they have seen them flying. It doesn't seem to use the wings to propel itself for the most part. It seems to have the ability to jettison and to speed up and slow down at will.
That's interesting.
And most of the sightings more recently have been around the O'Hare International Airport.
Well, there's a lot of UFO activity over the years up there around O'Hare, obviously. It kind of goes back. I mean, it's a combination of things in the flap, right?
Well, we have had some UFO sightings and other being sightings I think may be associated with this phenomena, and especially more recently. We did have a particular UFO sighting on the airport grounds that may have been associated with one of these beings. Basically, somebody saw something similar to this being that actually ascended into a UFO. And we had another instance in Rosemont, just outside the airport, where a witness saw a grade-like alien and 2 female humanoids accompany one of these winged beings. So, that kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing based on when we got those reports. I mean, I'm saying that they may be tied because we just don't know that for sure. But it just seems to be a lot of things that come and go as far as this phenomenon in general. And more recently, we've had 2 airline pilots come forward at O'Hare who had seen these beings. And as well, we've had some security people, including a TSA security person, who have also reported it.
Now, are they seeing these beings like at the airport, like on the grounds, or are they seeing them in the air? Or
one of the sightings was in the air by an airline pilot as he was taxiing along the runway, and the other pilot saw it as he was being transported in one of the jitney or one of the transports standing along the tarmac. And the TSA people, security guards saw this thing on the grounds, as well as other cargo security people have seen it on the grounds as well.
I know you've said we've had both. Does there seem to be a swing one way or the other if more people are seeing them in the air versus on the ground?
I don't know. I really can't give a percentage.
Sure.
I'd say maybe half and half. There's been a lot of other instances on the ground that have, we've had people see it where they never see it fly. We've had people see it on the ground and, actually jettison and, fly off. And we've had those that have seen it just in the air. So it's a mix.
Okay. You mentioned there were some other possibly associated sightings and events. Have we seen anything like ultra-terrestrial contact events like there were in Point Pleasant in 66 and 67?
Not really. It's mostly been the individual being, and of course, when the possibility of being involved with UFO and other alien beings. It's just been 2 instances of that, but overall, it's just been the actual being itself.
My regular co-host John, he's not here tonight, but we had mentioned some of your articles in our Mothman episode, and he had a theory that I hadn't heard of or thought of before, that he thinks that these creatures might possibly be aquatic or at least attracted to water because of the locations of the sightings. Do you have any theories on that common theme of being sighted near water?
Well, there have been some thoughts towards that. Of course, Chicago has a lake beside it, and it has a lot of waterways. But there have been sightings of this thing not associated with any water as well. It may very well be part of it, but I just can't really say that it is water has a real reason, as to why it's where it's at. That's just part of a lot of other things, we have been looking at.
It could be totally coincidental. There's water
Absolutely.
over a large percentage of the planet, so you're always near water, at least somewhat near water anyway.
Right.
I think John's original thoughts on it were that you can pretty well just follow the water down from Lake Michigan down to West Virginia. So he was thinking, well, hey, maybe there was some sort of, if this is the same creature or of the same genus, so to speak, maybe there was a northern migration there.
Well, the Mothman of Point Pleasant in description and mannerism, in my opinion, is just totally different than what they've been seeing in Chicago. Okay. I do believe that the Mothman of Point Pleasant was actually a summoned being. The energy, especially the spirit energy in that area, is very, very palpable. Of course, this thing was seen a lot of times in the area of the West Virginia Ordnance Works factory, or the TNT plant, people call it.
Right.
I believe that there's a lot of spirit energy there, very strong, possibly strong enough to actually summon one of these beings from another reality. And I think that's what the Mothman was. And I think overall these winged humanoids may very well be tied somehow to that. Now, I'm not suggesting that the sightings in and around Chicago are something that have been summoned, but it very well could be. It's just another theory, a working theory that we have. But the fact that people do see them actually disappear, and that their sightings are quite fleeting, very fast sightings, and that they just seem to come in and out, tends to make me think that, this may be some type of being that is just not indigenous to this earth plane that kind of moves in and out to another reality.
It's interesting that you brought up the possibility of it being summoned by some sort of force, either intentionally by some human or just naturally by the flow of the energy of the earth. But I have chatted with someone online that told me that he was told that these Chicago area Mothmen, in quotes there, were invited in to deal with a bigger threat, something about the corpsemen or the coresmen via an opened rift. Does any of that sound familiar to you at all?
No, I haven't heard anything about that, but, as far as that theory generally, that may be a good theory. They're coming from somewhere. There's just no doubt about that. But it's just not, it's quite a general area. And, it's not like they just stick to one specific spot. Now, of course, these sightings in and around Chicago, around the airport, O'Hara, why they are congregating there, that needs more investigation. There's definitely a reason for that. But why, we just don't know at this time.
How difficult is it to have any sort of investigation on the airport grounds?
You can't do it, basically. People have tried. I've talked to people that work at the airport, when we've talked to security people, and they are quite aware of the phenomena. They have been made aware of it by management at the airport and TSA. Not to talk to people about it, not to talk to us about it. But they have caught several people trying to sneak onto the airport grounds, trying to investigate
for those
this.
folks.
Yeah, it doesn't generally lead to an arrest. They mostly just get escorted off the property. But there have been arrests, and it's been kind of kept quiet. But this whole phenomena in Chicago they've tried to tamp down on this ever since the beginning of it. One of the witnesses that we had earlier actually worked in the mayor's office, and she let it be known to us that they definitely knew about it. And we have not gotten any cooperation to the city, the police, or anybody else. We've had several police officers who have seen it. We've had police officers, active and retired, who have had encounters with it, as well as I've talked to several police officers off duty and anonymously who told me that they are aware of people seeing these things.
Can you give us just a few of your favorite or your most eerie sighting reports?
The one in particular, well, there's several, but the one I do like the most is a sighting that occurred along Lakeshore Drive in Chicago on a summer evening about 9 o'clock. This couple who were visiting the woman's mother in Chicago were walking in front of her condominium. They were just out for a walk late. Well, not late. It's about 9 o'clock. And they were on Lakeshore Drive, which is adjacent to Lake Michigan. And as they were walking back towards the condominium building, they noticed this large winged being fly in front of them from left to right, from the lake towards the condo. And as they watched this thing, it suddenly swooped up along the side of the building, reached to the top of the building, and just hovered there like it was looking through one of the windows.
Wow.
And they were freaked out. This thing then suddenly arched back and started diving down towards the trees. As they made their way around the corner to come towards the entrance of the condo, this thing ascended in front of them and actually hovered in front of them about 2 or 3 feet above the pavement with its wings spread out, and just hovered there in front of them. And the description was of this thin, kind of shiny, almost wet-looking, emaciated humanoid, about 6 foot in height, with 12-foot wingspan, the bat-like wings, Definitely had legs and feet. They said there was vibrating as well, and they could actually feel the vibration coming off of this thing. They were about 4 or 5 foot in front of it. The woman actually lost control of her legs and just collapsed to the ground.
Wow.
Had red eyes, and it hovered there for about 10 seconds and slowly ascended, just like it was lifting up, being levitated up into the air, and then it took off. And he actually had to pick her up and carry her into the building. Now, there were security cameras there, but the security company hasn't given us any cooperation as far as getting any footage.
Of course.
There were other people at the location along the street who had definitely seen it. They noticed a flash of someone trying to take a photograph of it, and then people commenting or screaming or talking loud as a result of this thing being there. The interesting part about this with this couple, the gentleman is actually a professional athlete in the Washington, D.C. area. So okay. He's a well-known celebrity. And we've actually had another case where there was a celebrity involved too. But they were pretty shook up. They were supposed to leave.
I would imagine so.
They were supposed to leave for a flight back to Washington, D.C. area the next day, but they postponed it for 3 days. But they called me the next day and, gave me the report. So, that was an interesting case. That was up and close personal. We had another one out in Bolingbrook, Illinois, where a woman was walking at night as her routine. She was out walking, and there's a playground area not far from her home where she usually cuts through. And as she was walking along the sidewalk, she saw this tall, dark being standing there. Now, she actually thought there was two people embracing. It was that big. It was quite tall, too. She thought maybe they had an umbrella or something. And as she approached it, it looked, and she got about 10 foot from it. It literally turned and about a quarter of the way towards her, and she noticed that it definitely wasn't two people embracing. It was some type of being with possibly wings that were wrapped around the body and was making a gurgling sound. I believe the thing was actually sleeping. She kind of lost control physically as well. She tried to get away from it, and she lost control of her legs. She had to sit down at a bench and gather herself enough to where she could actually get back up and go home. When she got home, her son was there. She told him about it. They got in the car and drove back over to the playground. And the son did notice this thing kind of lunging toward the car from some of the bushes. So they went back home and then gave me a call. They were absolutely out of it. They were really freaking out.
Well, that's pretty terrifying. So
yeah.
I imagine they would be.
So those were two that really stood out to me. Of course, we've had other sightings where people have seen it swoop above them. And we had a couple who had actually, and this was along the lakefront as well, had actually had this thing swoop above them, away from them, then look back at it with its red eyes, turn around and come back at them. And then it was gone. But it's been a lot of different types of sightings, but they're never that long. They're never a lot of not a lot of time associated with any of them.
No reports of them trying to harm anyone either, right?
Well, there was one report in October 2017 in the Little Village area where a couple was in the parking lot of this local park, and it was at night, and this thing actually landed on the hood of the car, and it was scratching at the windshield. Now, I don't know if it was trying to get at them or what it was, but, it hopped off eventually and took off. But that was probably the most aggressive of the accounts that we have heard from these sightings. Now, there was a report I received later on from an earlier encounter in the Chicago area where this couple had been chased by this thing, and eventually, when they got home, it was still chasing them, and it attacked the woman and lacerated her shoulder with its talons, and she had to have medical treatment. But that was a third-person account that came from a friend of her son's, but he was aware of this. He was aware of the sighting.
That'd be a fun ER visit, trying to explain why your husband didn't push you down the stairs. It's actually a talon scratch from a winged cryptid monster. The poor guy probably got investigated by the police.
He probably did.
That's insane.
And that's probably why it was never reported to me directly.
That's probably a good bet. Looking back at all these cases, like you said, there's a couple of instances there where they're, more aggressive, but there's always been the associated with the Mothman, at least, the associated harbinger of doom. Everything is going to end. The world is coming to an end because this being is here and people are seeing it. What's the vibe like up and around the area where these people are seeing it? Do they feel that way?
Well, that harbinger theory is just speculation, in my opinion. This all goes back to what happened at Point Pleasant with the Silver Bridge collapse. And, since this thing had been seen by many people before that, and of course it being a huge tragedy with the death of 46 people in a little area.
Sure.
People are looking for excuses as to why it happened. So, of course, the big story around the area has been this Mothman, and it kind of got tied in with that. Keel didn't help it either because he kind of expounded on it as well. Excuse me. So, and there's a lot of other stuff going on around there too. Of course, the Men in Black and the UFO and paranormal activity and stuff. So that's kind of how this harbinger thing got involved with these winged beings. Now, the only account, and of course there have been other tragedies that have been associated with winged beings. The only one where I know of something actually being reported before a tragedy was at Chernobyl, the Blackbird Chernobyl. There was actual reports of this huge winged bird that was seen above the reactor several days before the actual disaster. But in other instances, I really can't find any reports of anything that happened before the tragedy themselves. Now, what had been going on in Chicago, that first summer of 2017, actually we started reporting this, I was literally getting 20 to 25 phone calls a day from just regular citizens wondering when the disaster in Chicago was going to happen. Wow. I mean, they were calling me at home at all hours, and I tried to tamp that down as much as possible. But, because I told them I just didn't believe that was the reason, as to why they're there. And, of course, we can't find any evidence that really ties into anything that's happened in Chicago. I mean, Chicago's a violent city, but I don't believe that anything that has happened there has anything to do with the sightings of these beings.
I'm actually doing some on the cuff researching as I'm talking to you. I'm located in Illinois, right near the Indiana border, about halfway down Crawford County. Right. And on the other side of the Wabash River, there's a small little burg of Miram, Indiana. It has this big bluff along the river. And on this bluff, I can't find any footage or photo evidence of this, but as a kid, I remember hearing that there was a big old painting of a giant bird on the side of the bluff, all the exposed rock.
Yeah, that is there.
Oh, it is. You're familiar.
Yeah, I am. The sightings of large winged beings is not uncommon in Illinois and Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, historically, the Thunderbird phenomena has been well known in that area.
Yes.
And the indigenous people knew of these beings. But there are pterosaur sightings all through the state as well. and other unknown winged humanoids. I had sightings all over the place, to be honest with you. Indiana seems to be a hot spot for a lot of paranormal activity anyway. Why that is, I have no idea, but there is a lot going on in Indiana. And of course, Illinois itself has had some major sightings of different things, including UFOs and winged beings. So, yeah, I mean, these areas are not immune to these type of sightings.
When was the last known to you proper like Thunderbird sighting of just an enormous bird that wasn't mistaken for any other creature, just a giant bird?
Offhand, I can't really think of the dates, but they've been within the last decade or so.
Really?
Yeah, there have been a lot of sightings of huge birds.
I remember finding a photo online of, this is a big thing on a couple of message boards, of this missing photo of all these guys. I don't remember what year, but it was a black and white photo, like posing around this giant bird that they had supposedly shot down.
Yeah.
And it's funny when I come across people looking for that, because I remember seeing it as well, and it's just all completely disappeared from the internet.
Well, I've got copies of those photos. There's several of them, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the bird itself looks like a pterosaur-type bird. Some of the people standing around it, some are actual in Union-like uniforms from the mid-1800s.
Yeah, I think that seems to be about what I remember.
Yeah, I can't really tell if there's any actuality to those photos. I know one researcher who believes that at least one of them is real, but he has no way of proving it.
Right.
You know, it's been my experience a lot of times that these are doctored photographs. But, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff we see in research, and a lot of photographs and a lot of video we can't really explain sometimes. But, I mean, is it possible? Sure, it may be possible. These winged beings have been seen all over the world, frankly, for, eons. So, somebody coming up with an old photograph or something like that, could it be? Yeah, sure.
I'm going to go a little bit off topic, but not really, still along the same lines. What would you say to any aspiring paranormal investigator? What's your best bit of advice you could give to someone who says, I want to get my feet wet and get out there and see what I can find?
Be patient. That's the best thing I can tell them. Be patient and not worry about what other people say or think. You kind of gotta let a lot of comments and stuff roll off your back. There's a lot of skeptics out there, a lot of people that try to disprove what you do. And you've got to be patient, and you got to be, you got to continue to do what you do. I mean, if you believe that what you're investigating is real, then keep at it. Don't let people try to dissuade you otherwise. That's something I've endured ever since I've done this.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's paid off basically because a lot of times I'll be involved with doing an investigation, and eventually something else may happen or other evidence will come forward to where it kind of bolsters what your original theory was. Now, as far as, this phenomena and, different types of cryptids and such, it's definitely out there. I don't care what the skeptics do. The skeptics that actually have an encounter are probably the most steadfast eyewitnesses there are.
Sure.
They just could do a 180 and, then they're true believers. So, and I've seen that happen many times.
All right. And I guess my last question for you before we finish up here and this, thunderstorm takes me out, is people want to find your stuff or get a hold of you. How can they do that? How can they find you online?
Well, you can go to phantomsandmonsters.com, and if you have a report, you can contact me there through the links that are available. or you can call me at 410-241-5974, or through email at Lon Strickler, phantomsandmonsters.com. There's lots of different ways to get a hold of me, and my books can be found at Amazon. I have several books that I've written over the years. The most recent was Winged Cryptids. It talks basically about, it's a case book of reports that have come into me personally and have been investigated by myself and my Fortean team. And you can find that on Amazon as well.
Well, that all sounds terrific, and I actually have one of your books on the way, and I can't wait till I get it so I can read it. I was hoping it would get here before the interview, but it did not, so the Postal Service has failed me yet again.
They have been slow.
It's okay. It'll get here, and it'll be worth it. Like you said, be patient. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up. I've been your host, Jason. My guest tonight, Lon Strickler. Thank you so much again for coming on the show and sharing with us some information. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks again. You take care.
You too.
Until next time, keep the fire going.